Welcome to Flashback Files, the podcast where career and leadership lessons from the past guide your journey forward. I'm Josh Green, and here we'll explore both my own experiences and the stories of others, unpacking wins, doubts, pivots, and the moments of clarity that shape us as leaders. You don't need to have it all figured out. Leadership often shows up in unexpected places, at work, at home, and in the choices we make every day. By reflecting on aspirations, mistakes, and breakthroughs, we can discover how the decisions of today build the leaders we become tomorrow. Each episode blends conversations and personal reflections, all with one purpose: to help you lead yourself first so you can lead others with confidence, purpose, and integrity. Whether you're just starting out, making a career shift, or simply seeking more clarity in how you show up in life, this podcast is for you. Because you don't need every answer. You just need to start asking the right questions. Hey, it's Josh. Welcome back to another episode of Flashback Files. This episode is once again for those in their early 20s, maybe more in their careers right now. Maybe you're working a job that doesn't feel like you or doesn't feel as glamorous as you expected your first role to be outside of university or college. This one you're probably going to relate to, because in my early career, it was just that. I spoke about the advertising agency experience and landing my first role in a sales job. Even though it allowed me to be a little bit more extroverted, it was still challenging because at the end of the day, it was sales. So my first sales gig, it wasn't inspiring, and it definitely wasn't aligned with what I thought my overall purpose was at the time. Coming out of school, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to make a difference in the world, and this is my shot. Wasn't the case. It was sales. It was a desk. It was a list of people who did not want to talk to me. I didn't know it then, but that job, it's one that I ended up getting through a network. It would actually help me shape the leader I eventually became personally and professionally. And it wasn't because it was necessarily my passion, or it wasn't because I had a great manager coaching me towards greatness, but it exposed me to every insecurity, every assumption, and every weakness, and every hidden strength that I didn't know I had. So this is a flashback file to the years that quietly built me through ego checks, small wins, big wins too, big losses, and through the identity formation that almost no one notices while it's happening. It's only when you look back. So here we go. So I was a bit of an accidental sales guy. If you listen to the last episode, it was I was at a point in my career where I wasn't performing very well at the advertising agency, and I needed to find a gig. And I found a gig thanks to my network at the time that I was able to land a sales job at a community newspaper. But let's make no mistake, I didn't dream about being in a sales role growing up. It was far from that. I thought I was going to be a Hollywood actor. I don't think many kids are waking up thinking, I can't wait to cold call strangers. But I got into the sales role in my 20s. It was available. It paid better than what I was doing. And it sounded like something confident adults overall did. And I thought I was confident. The key word, though, is thought. The reality hit very fast that I wasn't, because sales isn't really about confidence. It's actually about tolerance. It's about tolerance for awkwardness and rejection, tolerance for hearing, sorry, not interested, over and over again. And it's actually more times than my self-esteem was really prepared for. And just to paint the picture a little bit, because obviously context matters, the environment I worked in is something you'd only understand if you went through it. So it was just a kind of a flat desk, fluorescent lights that hummed, old phones, tangled cords, motivational posters that had probably been there since the 80s, and reheated coffee like it was oxygen. It was a vibe. So it was just a vibe that when you walked in, you just kept reassessing, is this the right decision? Just thinking, what am I doing with my life? It's almost like a quarter life crisis. And in the middle of all that, there I was, a young adult in my early 20s, trying just to figure out who I was as a person. One of my journal entries from back then noted, first big sale today. I think I finally get this. I love looking back how certain I was. I got one win and immediately thought I had mastered the universe. But that's what early adulthood feels like. Massive confidence swings based on tiny events. And one good day, and you feel invincible. One bad day, and you rethink your entire existence. There was a month that it was an infamous month at the time in my early career where I almost hit $15,000 in sales, which was a lot. I know it may not sound like a ton, but it was a lot. And for the moment, I thought I was unstoppable hitting that much revenue. And I kind of walked around the office with, just a little bit of confidence. My steps were lighter. And it was almost like a 20-something version of someone who had figured it out. But then life stepped in to keep me humble. One of my biggest deals for that month, the $12,000 order from a post-secondary school, evaporated overnight. It was canceled. So it just disappeared like it never existed. And I remember staring at the cancellation email like, this is personal. This has to be personal. There's no way the universe lets me have a good month just like that. And my confidence fell through the trap door. I tried to pretend it didn't bother me. I walked around the office with a fake calmness, but inside I was literally a disaster. I was so disappointed to go from such a high of getting that big sales month to losing $12,000 worth of it. But here's the thing. It taught me more about leadership than any title I ever had, because I learned something that most people don't really learn until they're older. You're not your results. You are how you respond to your results. So that distinction is everything. Looking back, I can see what the experience revealed. I could take a hit without quitting. I could feel embarrassed and still show up. I could separate emotion from execution. And I could keep going even when my ego was bruised. So those were, to me, now looking back, early signs of leadership, long before I ever managed a team or had any direct reports. So leadership shows up first in your character, not your job title. It constantly shows up for me as I continue with my career. So there was another element to my sales role, which is the human side of selling. So I think many people, and I thought so myself, people think sales is just about talking, but it's actually the opposite. The more listening you can do in sales, the more likely you are to succeed. And it's definitely about reading people. You start to understand things like the tone, the hesitation, nervous laughter, impatience, uncertainty, interest, annoyance. Sales trains emotional intelligence faster than any classroom ever could. You start to learn when to push, when to slow down or pause, when to ask questions. Maybe you need to change angles, or maybe you need to just check in and clarify some things. Maybe somebody needs a reassurance, and silence, you learn, is actually a good thing in sales. We're so interested to fill the air with talking, as I'm doing right now with this podcast, that we don't realize how powerful silence is in a conversation. So that ability overall, the ability to read people, becomes invaluable later as a leader, as a parent, in relationships, during conflict, in negotiation, and in life in general. So it was emotional training disguised as a paycheck. This is one of my entries. Some days I'm amazing at this. Some days I don't understand why they hired me. This is just a perfect snapshot of early adulthood and a perfect snapshot of my early days in sales. It's not failure. It's formation, the ebbs and flows of disappointments and wins, and managing both of those. Looking back, I wasn't lost. I was forming the earliest version of what will later become maturity. I started to learn who I was versus who I thought I was. In my 20s, I was building identity based on my potential. I'm confident, I'm outgoing, I'm ambitious, I'm a natural leader. And then real life shows up and says, prove it. So sales for me stripped away all of the illusions I had about myself very quickly. And I discovered that I wasn't as confident as I thought, but I was braver than I realized. Confidence is loud, bravery is quiet. If we look at confidence, it's more like I got this, whereas bravery for me was I'm scared, but I'm still trying. And sales definitely exposed that. Bravery builds you. Confidence really just only styles you, what people see. I was one of those people that feared sales. And I know in speaking to friends and family and people that I, just speak to about work, because I'm still in a sales sales leadership role today. And there's this fear that I get where, a lot of the responses is, oh, I could never do sales. But when you really think about it, we're selling ourselves every single day. I do get the fear though. Most of the fear comes from three places. Definitely fear of rejection, which was true for me. At that age, especially early in my 20s, my identity was still forming. So I was very sensitive to, I guess, external validation. So getting a no in sales feels like somebody's rejecting you as a person. Secondly, the fear of looking unprepared. There's lots of presentations, reading scripts. So sales definitely exposes your communication skills in real time. There's no filter, there's no edit button when you're speaking live one-on-one with a person. And then the third part is the fear of being judged. So we're terrified, or I was terrified, people will think I'm pushy, annoying, or desperate. But the truth is, these fears aren't about sales. They're about self-esteem. Sales just happens to be the arena where those insecurities show up first. And honestly, looking back, I'm super grateful I got punched in the face by rejection early. Rejection builds a type of emotional durability that pays off for the rest of your life. Difficult conversations get easier. Conflict doesn't derail you. Criticism doesn't destroy you. Breakups hurt less. Feedback becomes data, not identity. Sales didn't teach me how to sell. It taught me how to be okay with myself even when things don't go my way. And if you think about it, we sell ourselves every single day. One thing I didn't understand back then is we're all in sales. Even the people who say I could never do sales are selling every single day. When you try to make a good first impression, you're selling. When you convince a friend where to eat, you're selling. When you apply for a job, you're selling. When you're in a relationship, trust me, you are absolutely selling. And even with this podcast, let's be honest, you have to be bought in to me to keep listening. It's not the production, it's not the title, it's me, the person. Not in an inauthentic, insincere way, but in a, hey, I've lived some life, maybe this will help you make sense of yours kind of way. If you're still listening right now, it means on some level, maybe you bought into the story and you've bought into the human telling it. That's what selling really is: connection with purpose and sincerity. It's not manipulation. It's not pressure. It's just two people trying to understand each other long enough to decide, is this conversation worth continuing? When we think about this as maybe building blocks from a leadership perspective, when I zoom out now, this is what my early sales career gave me. Gave me resilience, not dramatic resilience, but the boring, consistent kind. It gave me, to some degree, emotional awareness, the ability to read people and adapt on the fly. Definitely helped with my communication, knowing when to talk, knowing when to simplify and when to simply just shut up. And self-awareness, learning to separate that I made a mistake from I am a mistake. Pressure tolerance, staying grounded when something suddenly goes wrong. Humility, you can't fake humility in sales. Your ego will always get checked. These are not corporate leadership skills. These are life leadership skills. And what I understand now is that my early career didn't make me successful. It made me self-aware. It didn't give me passion. It gave me pattern recognition. It didn't make me a leader. It gave me the raw materials for leadership. Those raw materials showed up long before I got better titles, long before I made more money, long before I understood who I was becoming. They were shaping me in the background through awkward moments, through embarrassments, through wins, through failures, through very long months, especially when I lose $12,000 out of $15,000 in 1 month. These are the years that built me, and it wasn't glamorous, it was gritty. If I were to think about this in general, if you're in your early 20s and you feel lost or confused or undervalued or unsure of where your career is going, just remember, you're not just working a job. You're laying down parts of the foundation of who you're becoming. Every rejection, every moment of awkwardness, every call where you don't know what to say, every small win, every big disappointment, it all matters. And it doesn't have to be isolated to sales. It's building the version of you, your relationships, your teams, your life. And one day you'll look back the same way I am now and think, I had no idea who I was becoming, but I'm glad I didn't quit. Thanks for listening to another episode of Flashback Files. I hope you tune in for another. We'll talk soon.